No, I'm just going to start introducing.
Everyone knows.
For those who don't know, Phil.
What are you doing here? Do you want to come? There's plenty of seats here in the front.
Please take a seat. Yeah, the seats are full seats. And at the side, please take seats. Yeah, you don't understand. It's going to be long.
Nearly. Amy on too for me.
Who's coming now?
Do you want the photo?
I don't know. That maybe Thelma did.
Thelma, do you need the photo?
No, the photo.
Sharon, there's room here in the front.
Family here. This is the family area. Yeah, oh well, that's nice. Where's Eliezer? Where is he?
No, I
Is that outside the house?
Whose house?
No. Okay.
Hi. Okay. These drinks. Did everyone get drinks when you come in?
Of course, one of the main reasons of having this Yahrzeit and inviting you all here, well, the main reason is probably because, of course, I sat Shiva in my father, Arthur Showalter, sat Shiva for him in Manchester, and the stone setting was in Manchester. So I know none of you had a chance to visit me during the Shiva. So that's probably the main reason we're having such a big affair, if you want to call it. Very thankful to have almost all my family in Israel here, almost all. This is my nephews, Jonathan and Daniel, who originate from Manchester, and that's Phil, my brother's sons. Jonathan's wife and 2 children are hopefully coming here. They had a puncture in the flat. The installator was there, so whatever. And sitting there is my cousins Madeline and Martin from Yahrzeit. And you can't hear? You can't hear? The seats at the front for those who can't hear. Sorry. And the rest of the family is Amy. Abiad's in London. Please God, you'll be going to university soon. Bezrat Hashem. We'll see. And this is Thelma. I think that's all the family that are here at the moment in Israel. So we're going to start with Thelma's going to say something about my father. Some nice words about this.
I can only say nice words about Arthur. Anyway, I'm going to get through this one. First of all, I just want to start off, which I think is very appropriate. We've got 2 men here tonight that have become grandpas this week, so it's always nice to have a birth when you're doing a Haskara.
So next to each other.
So here are Elliot and Eliezer and Mazel Tov, you say. So, right. I was very, very fortunate to have a very, very special relationship with my in-laws. From the moment I met them, even though my mother-in-law, God bless her soul, she was in a house coat, dressing gown, when I met her, which I thought was unusual for a Jewish woman. Like, they usually like something like Mrs. Bucket, you know, that wants to be everything's right. But from the moment I met her, I realised that they were like the salt of the earth. And I was lucky enough to spend about 29 years, 30 years that I knew them. And we had so many good times together. Now, I'm cheating because Phil, my brother-in-law, their father, is made a speech that no one could make any better at the Haskara in Manchester. So I'm using his speech because it just completely covered everything. So he says, Rabbi Herman, oh, he's not here, sorry. On behalf of all the family, may I first thank you for joining us today to show your appreciation, to quote from the stone that was unveiled, A dedicated communal worker and a life well spent. Dad, Arthur Cecil Reed, Shaul Alter Ben Yoel, was born in 1921 and was, for all but a few months, 90 years in this world. He left behind, as well as 3 sons and daughters-in-law, 6 grandchildren, and had the scud in the last few months to meet and hold his first granddaughter, Sephora. He had the further merit of the continuance of his name just 2 days after he passed away, when his second great-grandchild, Shaul Alter Jr., had his bris in Yerushalayim. This is when he says Dad's grandchildren. I mean, Amy and Avia, Jonathan, his wife, are in his right mind. They're here. I have to read that one. This is, I just remembered before, because I kept thinking I'll say this at the end, but just before I forget, this is not only a contribution. Tribute to Arthur Reed. It's also to the Welsh Jewry, because I think they're amazing. If you look at those magazines and you see how they kept the Jewish lifestyle in Cardiff, and we have examples of them today. He says, so, you know, where are you as well? You're really old. Where are all these Welsh people? There you are. Okay. In Dad's last few years, following the passing of his dear wife Frances, our mum, to whom he was completely devoted, he began to lose some of his faculties, suffering from vascular dementia. But up until then, Dad was the epitome of public service. I will gloss over the first 60-odd years when he lived in Cardiff. After all, he was a school teacher. Teachers were poorly paid in those days. He often needed a second job to make ends meet. I can remember back in the mid-60s, before left sitting in our Ford Anglia somewhere in the South Wales valleys, while Dad was inside one of the terraced houses, ubiquitous. He's cleverer than me. Well, ubiquitous in that part of the world, trying to sell a correspondence course on behalf of Rapid Results College. So he wouldn't have to have much time for voluntary work, particularly as he played cricket every weekend in the summer. More memories of schlepping around the Welsh valleys, and I refereed in the local football league in the winter, not to mention the occasional schoolboy international. So he would have had time for anything else, except on the council at Cathedral Road Shul, on the editorial board at KJ's, the Cardiff Jewish Communal Magazine. Has anyone got a tissue before you?
Sorry.
Thank you. I hope you haven't used
all the way
it.
from
Now you are.
Do you want it back?
Yes. I'll take the white one instead of
on the editorial board of KJX, the Cardiff Jewish Communal Magazine, for no less than 38 years, editor for many of those years, chairman and president of Ajax, treasurer of Pennyland House, Cardiff's equivalent to Heathlands, Cardiff Schools Football League, secretary, treasurer and chairman, Welsh Schools Football Association, assistant secretary, a total of 22 years, and eventually chairman. As I said, I'll gloss over those years. Dad would have been too busy to do anything. Mum and Dad moved from Cardiff to Manchester in the summer of 1988, a week before we moved from London. How old were you then, Jonathan? 1, yeah? I said, so they were in Manchester. And he was to be in his element. There were so many different communal organisations with which he could get involved. If he fell out of one of those organisations, I know not why, but he sometimes did. there was always another one that would welcome his skills and enthusiasm with open arms. Dad had a particular broad set of skills. Perhaps first and foremost, he was a fluent and eloquent speaker, and he really enjoyed public speaking. I remember one of the times, I try to quote this whenever I can, but whenever he stood up, he always said something like, started off with a joke, and I failed to do that today. So I'll just include it now. He'd say, you know, go round, Rabbi so-and-so, friends, why are we all here? Because we're not all there. He was an eloquent speaker and he really enjoyed public speaking. In his time as a volunteer at the Nicky Alliance Centre, he regularly led discussion groups and also gave occasional talks. These included one entitled Jewish Humour is Best and another from Lech Lecha to Llanelli. The mind boggles. I wish I'd known about those at the time because I'd really like to have heard them. But Dad wasn't the sort of person to go trumpeting his achievements. Dad was no less talented with the written word. I've already mentioned his long-standing contribution to the literary output of Cardiff Jewry. On arriving here in Manchester, he soon got back into editorial mode and edited Centre Scene, the Nicky Alliance magazine, for no fewer than 18 years. But if you didn't know, you wouldn't know. Nowhere in the magazine would you find the name of the editor. Dad was one for not getting his name in lights. He certainly wasn't in any of this for the kabod. As well as his editorial input, each edition usually contained several articles which he had penned himself. You'd see a modest ACR at the foot of the articles he had written, but that was about it. No other indication that he had any involvement with Centre Scene. He'd always been like that. Back in Cardiff, he'd often use a pseudonym. His favourite, which he used for much of his input to KJX magazine, was Chronicle. Much of the history of Cardiff Jewry was chronicled by him in the pages of a KJX. If anyone is particularly interested, I have a full set from 1950 to 1992. Where are they? In the loft? Yeah. Well, Dad was perhaps coy about his literary efforts. This should certainly not be taken to mean that he was shy or introverted. Indeed, he was very much a leader. I mentioned some of the organisations which he had chaired or led in some other way in Cardiff. In Manchester, he was chairman of Ajax, not to mention welfare officer and raffle promoter, vice chairman and outgoings officer of the Jubilee Club, and he ran the Cavendish Court Residence Committee. And if he had something to say, he certainly wasn't afraid to say it. He represented Ajax on the Rep Council, and it wasn't unknown for him to be headlined in the JT, following one of his contributions to the monthly meetings. I don't want to keep you here too long, so I won't spend time talking about the other contributions that Dad made to communal life in Manchester. The Talking Newspaper, Meals on Wheels, Steen Court's Children's Service, volunteer at Heathlands, guide at the Jewish Museum, even bingo call at the Nicky, and probably others that I've never found out about. But for those of you who may not have known Dad well, I hope I've triggered some fond memories. For those who knew him less well, perhaps you will feel that you missed out. Thank you for listening. Right, that was filled. I just wanted to say, Amy Sunday, she sent an email on the day of the unveiling, and she says that, pardon? No, I'm not reading it all out. I'm just putting that she says, I've